For perspective, I will note that the crypto market cap for the entire asset class before the election last year, November 2024, it was about $2.2 trillion. So with that perspective, let me just say, it is amazing that the crypto market cap today, right this very second, is almost $3.7 trillion after, keyword after, the biggest liquidation event in crypto history just 6 days ago. I mean, think about it. Think about all that. All that built-up leverage is gone, folks. It's like snap of a finger, Thanos vanished, gone. And we're still at these price levels? That's insane. How come more people aren't pointing that out? I've seen some people point it out. Like, shouldn't everyone just recognize that's ridiculously impressive? The fact, like, what you're looking at in the aftermath of that, as terrible as those events are, as volatile as they are, you're looking at an organic situation after all of that leverage is flushed, and we are still at these levels. Bitcoin at $111,000, XRP at $2.41. That's incredible. And I'm going to give you a ton more reasons that you should be optimistic, including some very good signs, including from a historical perspective. But I said what the prices of those cryptos are, Bitcoin and XRP, you already know what the market cap is. But can I just reiterate, this is ridiculous? I mean, of course, the fact that we even had a liquidation, the biggest one in history, in the history of the 16-year history of crypto, the worst liquidation that happened 6 days ago, and we're sitting here at these levels that we would have been dreaming, salivating about these levels just a year ago. For some perspective. Just saying here, folks. And I admit, I don't know for sure what's going to happen. I never do. But like every other human on the planet, I have suspicions about which way the market's going to go. And so I'm always happy to talk about that. And I don't have an ego, so if I'm wrong, it's like no big deal. I'll just be like, yep, missed that one. But I will be surprised if that marked the peak of the market. Like, I would be absolutely shocked. So I'm on record for better or worse. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I do not think that was the peak for the crypto market. I don't think it's the peak for the stock market either. And you know that we have never had alt season, which means we've never had XRP go off on like a final crazy parabolic rally without the rest of the market going. We've never had an alt season, including XRP, going without small cap stocks going, right? And what's on your screen right here is the Russell 2000, small cap stock index, right? Look at this. I shared this post in the evening yesterday. And I wrote the following: the Russell 2000 closed at a new all-time high today. Of course, we need to see continuation here, but this is strong evidence of increased appetite for risk on assets like stocks, crypto, and specifically XRP. Even if we get a pullback, I doubt the bull market is over. And I indeed mean that. Look at this. The Russell 2000 closed at a record high of 2,519. It had an intraday all-time high also of 2,541. Really impressive here. Like, it would be super weird if it took 4 years for the Russell 2000 to come back, start flirting with all-time highs, and it's been hitting some new all-time highs recently. It'd be super weird if it hits that, and it's just like, just kidding, no face melting rally for me. Okay, like, that wouldn't be normal. That wouldn't be historically normal. If it happens, fine. Okay, then we'll just look at that and be like, okay, what did we miss? That doesn't seem to make a whole ton of sense here. So if this thing's going to go, crypto's going with it, including XRP. Here's a post from chart analyst Dom to kind of drive that point home. He's just pointing out something that's just historically true. And this should get you excited if you're in crypto. He's talking about the Russell 2000, but again, I just explained the correlation between the Russell 2000 rocketing upward and alt season, meaning also XRP goes crazy, it's there. So chart analyst Dom wrote, the Russell 2000 has blasted into an all-time high over the last 2 days. This same setup has happened 4 times over the last 13 years. Every time, crypto followed with a parabolic move within 2 weeks max. The question remains, is this time different? Okay, well, I would say the best question is this time different structurally? Because there are some individuals, and we'll see if they end up being correct. I've been talking about them off and on recently. Raoul Pal, Julian Biddle, TechDev, they've all been insisting that what makes the most sense is for this particular rally to extend into 2026, perhaps even into Q2 of 2026, because of the state of global liquidity, and what that means for the business cycle, which has not peaked because the peak for each crypto cycle has been when the business cycle has peaked. And for that reason, that's it in a nutshell. You can go way more in depth than that, and I have on this channel. But in a nutshell, that's why. And since we haven't seen that peak for the business cycle, it just quite frankly doesn't make sense to expect that this is right when the peak would be. Even though in terms of if you're just looking purely at time, yeah, I mean this would be the time where you'd expect things to be going ballistic, more or less, right? So if this is going to take a little bit longer, that would actually be in line. By the way, that would also explain why XRP had its first major burst in November of last year, and now it's been almost another year, and we haven't entered face melting yet. In fact, it would be weird if XRP had gone into true face melting without a full-blown alt season. That's never happened before, and I don't think it's going to happen this time. So I don't think it means that there's something broken with XRP. Certainly not. That doesn't make any rational sense. What I am saying is we need everything to go. So what we're betting on is, on a macro scale, does that make sense? And I just, based on historic precedent, I don't think it makes sense to believe that this bad boy is done. I just don't. Here's another reason why. This is a post from Ryan Dietrich. He's the chief market strategist at Carson Group. Man, this guy pops out bangers on X. I got to tell you, he's just data on data on data based on historical perspectives. And I just love to see it. I've been sharing a fair bit of his stuff over the last week or two now. But he wrote here, years after a 20% gain tend to see a big end of year push higher. And so, the S&P 500 last year, 2024, it was up like a little over 23%. Fantastic year. Above average. Definitely above average. Over 23% increase. And after a year like that, which we're in 2025 now, obviously. So after a year like we just had in 2024, when you get to 2025, but specifically the fourth quarter of 2025, which is where we're living right now, it's October, folks. I know the year's almost done. Historically, the S&P 500 just rockets tremendously, and that's what's being charted right here on your screen. When you get to Q4 historically with a setup similar to this, it just rockets tremendously. So you can bet against history. It's just that if you think that humans are going to tend to behave differently in similar situations, if that's the way you vote most of the time, you're going to be wrong most of the time. You'll be right some of the time, sure, because sometimes unlikely, improbable things happen, or there's just enough variance to where you get a little twist on what you thought was likely to occur. Fine, yeah, you'll get some of that. But if instead you look at how humans behave in certain situations and you recognize if where we are now is kind of similar to that, and then you bet accordingly, you're going to be right the majority of the time. That's the way it works. That's what the data bears out here. And so for that reason, I do not find it probable that this market's over, and that means that XRP and everything else goes higher. Here's a post from chart analyst Mustache. This is the market cap Bitcoin dominance percentage chart, and you'll love to see this. It says, I can hardly remember when we needed more patience than in this cycle. But knowing in the back of my mind that Bitcoin dominance has broken downwards from a plus 2 year ascending broadening wedge makes me feel very, very positive. Bitcoin dominance down equals crypto up. Yeah, a couple things on this. That's true. In fact, I don't think literally, I don't think you've ever had to be more patient in any other crypto cycle than this cycle because we haven't peaked yet. We just haven't. So if this thing's going to keep dragging out here, it's a function of time. Yeah, actually quite literally true. So can't dispute that. And then as far as when he wrote here, Bitcoin dominance down equals crypto up. Yep. Bitcoin dominance. And look you can even show here, broke below a key trend line. I went back up to back test. He notes here it was a bearish back test. He says, he's predicting here, obviously it's going to go down. You're going to see Bitcoin dominance plummet to where it is at about 59% into like 48% range. And I doubt it'll stop there. But wherever it bottoms, it'll bottom. But the key takeaway is when that happens, the moment where that happens, the drop happens fast. Bitcoin price can go up during that, and I would expect it to. And historically, that is when alt season kicks off. And that's when you should expect XRP to go on its final face melting rally. So, and there's so many analysts that'll tell you, like, XRP clearly wants higher. Oh, XRP so clearly wants higher. That's not an unpopular opinion from chart analysts with great track records in sharing what they believe is probable about XRP over a span of years, actually. Here's a post from Matthew Hyland, and he's talking about Bitcoin's Bollinger Bands. And I spent so much time in 2024 talking about XRP Bollinger Bands because the tighter those sons of bitches get, the greater the force with which they will burst. The price will burst when they finally expand. And so I noted that XRPs got to the tightest in history in April of 2024, but then that got even tighter for the next half a year. They trended even tighter for about half a year. So I didn't know for sure when it was going to burst, and I always acknowledge that throughout the year. I was like, guys, this does mean that when it goes, it's going to go. And the last time it was even almost this tight, that was 2017. You know what happened in 2017. XRP ripped faces off, right? And then melted the ripped off faces. That's what XRP did. It's very violent, very violent. Everybody had to get a new face. But here we are. It's 2025 now. We're all people of the faces again. And it's the same metric that we're looking at here. And so it doesn't tell you which direction things are going to burst. And this is where you got to decide, okay, are we in a bull market or are we in a bear market? Because if it's going to burst and we're in a bear market, it's going to be a disastrous dive to the downside. Possible. I'm not betting on that one, but sure, possible. But if it's the bullish one, that's where the life-changing wealth is to be made. And so for me, it's an easy bet because even if it is bearish in the unlikely event, and to my mind, it's unlikely, but if that happens, no skin off my back, I'm going to hold the same amount of crypto that I have. I'll keep making money over the next several years. And as I make more money, I'm going to buy even more crypto and then it'll go back up. We'll be in a new market cycle and then I'll sell at even higher prices. So I don't care because I'm an adult and I'm not going to cry if I don't get to sell this year, even though I'd really like to sell this year for massive profit. I don't get to control that. I get to control whether I have exposure to the asset class. So no, that doesn't stress me out at all if we enter a new bear market. I don't give a damn. I mean, well, that's too far. I care, but I'm not going to feel distraught. It's not, and it's also sure as hell not going to change my behavior. If we enter a bear market, no. I'm going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Just stack and stack and stack, hodl. That's it. I've been doing it for almost 8 full years now. And if we enter another bear market right now, that ain't going to change. See you in another 4 years, folks, or 5 or whatever the hell it takes. Don't care. It's going to be fine. But I don't think we're going to have to wait that long. But here's what Matthew Hyland had to say about Bitcoin's Bollinger Bands. And this should get y'all hot and bothered. A Bitcoin monthly Bollinger Bands continue to reach the most extreme levels ever. He does mean that quite literally. Look at the screen down here. Ever. He says, every single band expansion in its history has led to higher prices by the time it completed. So we are at that moment yet again. Is this time different, folks? I don't think so. I'm not going to bet in that direction. I don't think this time is different. It's not likely. Again, I know sometimes you get something that is actually different. Okay. Sometimes the improbable happens, but you're going to be wrong if you bet that way most of the time. Here's a post from X-Force Global. Bitcoin. Focus on the macro picture. There is absolutely no reason to be macro bearish. In fact, this pullback is a dream for many spot investors, including leveraged traders that got burned. Rule out the emotions. We are still above 6 digits. Okay, I think that's a pretty damn level-headed approach. It's a great way of thinking and just taking stock of the current situation. But I understand everybody's been so bearish the last nearly week now, ever since this liquidation event. It's like everybody went from super bull to, I'm a bear now. Like everybody, that's my whole feed. I don't literally mean everybody, of course. I mean, the analysts that I follow, one of them has flipped what he thinks is likely to occur. But everyone else, not the case, still in bull mode. And I understand sometimes the minority opinion ends up being correct. I always acknowledge that. The minority opinion can be right. It usually is not. Here's a post from the great Matsby. Also, Bitcoin says, people draw trend lines to fit their bias all the time, but if you include all the early wicks in 2021, Bitcoin has successfully back-tested trend and is ready to go higher. And folks, by the way, he's one of the analysts I follow who accurately predicted XRP breaking out to the upside. He's always been pretty damn level-headed with a pretty damn good hit rate. He's like, yeah, no, we're not done here. Going higher. And think about this. Why is it that the analysts that I've been following who are right about the Bitcoin bottom, just on the whole, they were right about that when it was not popular to say, no, Bitcoin bottom, we're going higher. That was not a popular thing to say. They were right about that. I think all of them. I don't know if there's any exceptions to that. Excuse me, folks. And then, so now here we're in this point, and everybody's flipped bearish. but the analysts that I follow haven't changed their perspective just because of that event. Isn't that interesting? So everybody suddenly flipped bearish, but the guys that I was already following, they haven't? That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think that a lot of them, a lot of those analysts are just fly-by-night analysts. Maybe they're new to crypto. I don't know. They're popping up my newsfeed. They're everywhere. And a lot of it is just like, people on social media saying stuff and bitching on the internet, which is fine because that's what the internet was made for. It's to air grievances. It's basically, it was created to be like the electronic version of Festivus from Seinfeld. Like that. That's pretty much why it exists. So I get that, and that's how good it's done. But I don't think that's the most likely. Even if we do have a pullback here, and by the way, I mentioned this in recent videos. I follow analysts, reputable analysts, who do think there's a reasonable chance that we could have a pullback here with the stock market, and then crypto will almost certainly go with it. I'm not seeing any of them call for, a bear market, or that to be some sort of indication that we're heading into a bear market. So even if we do get a pullback like that, in their minds anyway. Here's the crypto total market cap, excluding the top 10 coins by market cap. So this is a good indicator of what's happening with altcoins. Also from the Great Matsby, he says, and the chart's called Others. So he says, anyone paying attention to this bullish trend line for Others, it's been battling it for over a year, and since its last breakout in July, has maintained it as support. Well, there's some additional fun confluence, don't you think? This is why all these analysts I follow that say, despite the liquidation event, nothing in the charts is broken. This is why I find those arguments compelling. So you take what those analysts are saying about the charts, and you take what's normal from a historical perspective, and you look at everything else. Well, look at what's happening in the stock market, the Russell 2000, you name it. Do you really think it's probable that the top is in? Like that's it. Factoring in everything, not just charts. You never want to look at just charts. That's not going to paint you full. But if you factor in everything, do you really think that's the case? I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I guess some people do. I don't find that compelling. I'm just telling you my honest opinion. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I just don't find that compelling. Here's a post from chart analyst Bobby A. He says Ethereum hit the measured move of its first weekly bull flag of this V-shaped recovery, and will soon hit the intended target of its second weekly bull flag at roughly $8,000. You know what that means, right? If Ethereum hits $8,000 and XRP matches that market cap of what Ethereum would be if Ethereum is $8,000, if XRP just matches that market cap, I crunched the numbers, XRP would be $17.35. That's not a big ask. It really is. And it doesn't mean that Ethereum would even necessarily have to stop there. That's less than a twofold increase from its previous cycle high several years ago, right? Because it didn't even hit $5,000 last market cycle, 2021. It almost did. I think it got up to like 4,800, somewhere around there. It was up around there. But it could go even higher. Take a look at this. From chart analyst Galaxy, Ethereum, I believe we will see $15,000 per ETH at some point, but it might take a while. Slower bull runs are better. The longer it takes, the more opportunities we get. Conviction stays on. Look, another analyst acknowledging this is actually a slow bull run right here. Isn't that in line with what Raoul Pal and Julian Biddle and TechDev have been saying? Are they right about this, even though like currently that's a minority opinion? It is, but then I see more, and I've talked about this recently a couple times. I've just noticed more and more analysts that I follow talking about the length of this cycle and how it's like slower. And I've noticed like a couple more are talking about things happen a little bit later. So I think that they're kind of figuring this out. Maybe it is. We'll find out. I don't pretend to know. But it could be the case that Raoul Pal, Julian Biddle, and TechDev are right. And this thing really does go into 2026, which if that's the case, we can't control. That's fine. It's still going to come here. But another analyst being like, takes patience, right? Because slow bull run. Interesting, right? You didn't really hear that as so much in previous cycles. That's my recollection. But it is true that, as they say, the wider the base, the higher space, meaning the longer something consolidates, the greater the force it's going to burst with when it finally goes. So I guess that part's good regardless. But if Ethereum really hits $15,000 and XRP matches the market cap of Ethereum there, each XRP would be worth $32.55. And so you can think about that. And it's like, even if XRP does half that, you're looking at over $16 XRP. Even if XRP does a third of that, just a third, so way underperforms Ethereum, you're still looking at almost $11 XRP. And that's why I keep saying, like, I don't make price predictions. I don't know where XRP is going to peak at. I admit I don't know. But I don't think it's a big ask. Like, I don't think it doesn't take much to get up there. This is why I keep saying the people that are making price predictions for double-digit XRP are not crazy. It doesn't take that much. Like, nobody thinks this is crazy for Ethereum, but somehow it's crazy for XRP, even though there's this historical precedent for it battling ETH for the number 2 spot in market cap. Like, come on. Excuse me. Sorry, folks. Some of you may know I've been getting over a little bit of an illness, nothing serious, but I got a slight bit of a cough here. It's also why I was out for a couple days recently. Here's a post from Chart Nerd. XRP remains in this falling channel with $2.70 being the major resistance. That's the red block on the screen to clear the runway back to all-time highs. And so he does believe, like, his conviction hasn't changed. This is yesterday he posted this. Higher, my friends. Not only that, he made this comparison. I've been seeing a lot of this too. At a separate post yesterday, he also said, XRP, it's 2017 all over again. Now, that I want to see, because that was the most insane run up to that point in freaking history. And right now, a lot of analysts are still arguing that structurally it's pretty much doing the same thing. Not all of them are arguing that, but that would be fantastic if so, because you have one major leg up, move sideways for a while, second major leg up, way, way, way higher. And the second leg up is way more impressive than the first historically. So I hope that's happening. Here's a post from Crypto Wizard. He thinks so. XRP chart on the left is from 2013 through 2018. Then you've got on the right here another XRP chart. It's from, that looks like about the second half of 2017 up until where we are now. So you can compare the past XRP price action to what's happening now on the right. He says the main course. Structurally, this is absolutely identical to the 2017 cycle. XRP retested its 2021 all-time high demand zone with sellers now out. All that needs to happen is a breakout above $3.65. The main course is still yet to come. And so there you go. Another analyst comparing what happened 2 cycles ago to what's happening right now. Wouldn't be surprised if you see history kind of rhyme with itself here. Also, he's noting the same thing I started the video with. The sellers are gone, folks. So, I mean, if something happens and more pressure comes, okay, fine. Excuse me, folks. But at least it'll be organic. Like the leverage stuff, it's gone. So at least we've got that. After all that, and then there was some panic selling, but it's all done. And here we are. All things considered, not that bad. I better wrap up here because I feel like I'm about to have a coughing fit because I've been talking for like 23 minutes now. But thank you for hanging on. I really do appreciate the support. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.